Welcome back to the Stretch Game. It is the stretch between discovering deeper purpose and mastering higher productivity. I am so glad that you are here today because I'm doing something a little different. It's been top of mind lately for me to really think about the different times in my life when I've been struggling to succeed at something. And whenever I finally get over the hump, whenever I finally accomplish the goal, what I realize is that I was right there. There was just some little thing I didn't understand, or some little hack that I wasn't doing, or some little piece of knowledge that I did not know that was not allowing me to succeed. And this has become so prevalent in my life. The reminder of it helps me to move forward, to continue to get things done, to continue to press forward even when I feel like I'm not there. And so I thought, how can I best illustrate this to you? So that's what today's episode is about. Not only is it going to be a reminder that whenever you're uncertain, you might just be an inch away. You might almost be there, but it's also going to give you some really fundamental time management tools as well. Enjoy.
Stone Jordan
wants you to stretch yourself
by discovering deeper purpose
and mastering higher productivity.
That's how you win at
The Stretch Game.
This week is a gift, so live purposefully and be productive with it. So if you know anything about me, you know that I love to ride my bike. And this goes back many years before my wife and I moved into the city. We lived in the country, and there was this area very close to where we lived that was absolutely beautiful for riding a bike. A developer went into this area. It was like 1,000 acres, and they were going to build these extravagant homes. And after they got the infrastructure laid down, like the blacktop roads and cul-de-sacs and all this, the housing crisis hit. And so you have this massive 1,000-acre area out in the middle of what was completely woods with these blacktop roads up and down hills, but with no homes. And so I became the benefactor of this area. It was like my own personal nature area with beautiful, perfectly developed, brand new roads. And so I found myself riding this all the time. I got to where I rode my Mongoose Walmart mountain bike every day. And like exercise is, it became the stress release for me at the end of a busy day. It became my time to commune with nature. It became a very meditative and praying time for me. And I just got to where I loved riding my bike. And so that was technical riding because there were a lot of hills. There were even areas that were gravel. There were areas that were dirt. It wasn't your typical road racing. And so it was kind of outside of my norm when I got the idea to ride in a century race. That's a 100-mile bike ride. And so like anything else, whenever I get really excited about it, I start doing a ton of research and thinking, okay, if this is the goal, how am I best going to reach that goal? And I had purchased a new bike at that time, more of a bike shop bike, a nice bike, and I had been riding it. And so one of the things that I read about was how to optimize that bike so it is the most efficient, because this is a 9.5+ hour ride, a 100-mile ride is. And so I remember very clearly watching this YouTube video, and it was explaining how the height of your bike seat, depending upon how high it is, if it was within an inch being outside of the zone, like this perfect zone for your body, it made a massive impact in the efficiency output of your pedaling. And so I found through watching this YouTube video that I had been riding this bike with my seat at the wrong height, and it was more than an inch outside of that zone where it needed to be. And whenever I made the change and I followed the instructions, I got the bike seat to where my knee was slightly bent whenever it was on the downward arc of my pedal, and I got that perfect. I noticed an immediate and huge change in my energy output. Now, fast forward 6 months later to when I do go ahead and ride this 100-mile bike ride. I end up riding it. It takes 9.5 hours. And as I'm getting to the very end, and there's so many things that go through your mind when you're pushing yourself for that many hours, your blood sugar drops a lot. It's almost odd, some of the states that you go through and some of the things you think. But I went back to that day whenever I watched that YouTube video that explained that if you're outside an inch of what optimal is, then it's going to make a huge, huge impact on the efficiency of your ride. And so that was a 9.5 hour ride. If I hadn't made that really simple 1-inch adjustment, it would have been so much more of a labor to complete the journey that I needed to complete. And I thought, that is so much like life. You know, sometimes it just takes a small tweak, a minor hack, just one little thing that gets you over the edge and helps you dramatically to accomplish your goal. And so I've seen that manifest itself many times now throughout my life, but one place that I can look back and see where it really manifested itself early on was whenever I first learned of Stephen Covey's The 4 Quadrants. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because there's a lot of information on it, but I do want to give you an overview for the productivity portion of this episode. Stephen Covey believed that you could break down a life, basically the time spent in a life rather, into 4 quadrants. And those quadrants were a combination of one of 4 concepts. Whether the time was important, or the action was important, was not important, or the action is urgent, or the action is not urgent. That if you were to break down the time in someone's life, everything they do could fit into a combination of those concepts. So he created 4 quadrants. The 4th quadrant is not urgent and not important. Now, this is what Stephen Covey calls the quadrant of waste, meaning nothing good is getting done. This is sitting in your underwear during a weekday and watching The Price is Right. Okay, nothing good is coming from that. That is me just sitting and binge watching The Biggest Loser. Now, there is a caveat to this quadrant. It's not saying that all time you spend not directly moving towards a goal or an outcome or a specific ideal in life is a bad thing, that's wasteful. No, what this quadrant really is it's time that you haven't scheduled or appointed or managed, right? It's whenever you are watching that episode of The Price is Right, and at the end of it, you just realized you've watched a half an hour of The Price is Right, and that was nothing scheduled. You're a wandering generality, okay? You're not planning the time that allows you to maybe get your energy back or just to have some fun. So that's quadrant 4. Definitely don't want to live there. That's the quadrant of waste. Then let's go to quadrant number 3. Quadrant number 3 is urgent but not important. And you might ask yourself, what in the world is both urgent and not important? And the answer to that question is absolutely nothing. And that's why Stephen Covey calls this quadrant, quadrant 3, the quadrant of deception. Now, an example of something that would fall in the quadrant of deception is, let's say that you have something really important you need to do to help you reach your goal, but it's really difficult and you just don't want to do it. Or you have an important phone call that you need to make, but you really don't want to talk with the person. So you look at your desk and you see that it's a mess and you haven't cleaned it up in 4 or 5 days, and you think, okay, really, this is super important. I have to get this done right now. And so you clean up your desk so that you feel a sense of accomplishment. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. That's why he calls this the quadrant of deception, or sometimes it's called the quadrant of distraction. It's, our brains are an amazing thing, and they can get us to believe that something is important just to take our minds off of the things that we don't want to do. So that's quadrant 3. Then let's go up to quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is the quadrant of urgent and important. Okay, both urgent and important. Now, what's interesting is most successful people live their lives in this quadrant. So it's a reactionary way of living, right? Something is urgent and it's important, so you get it done. You go to the next thing that's urgent and important, and you get it done. Now, even though most successful people live their lives in this space, and this is where the real breakthrough came for me, whenever I was able to articulate through Stephen Covey's articulation that this is intuitively not where we want to live. We intuitively know that we don't want to live in reaction. And that's why this quadrant 1, is called the quadrant of demand. We're always taking the demands that come in, and we're living in a reactionary life, which brings us to quadrant 2. And I would personally call this the zone. And that is the quadrant of not urgent, but important. Now, this is living in a way that you're doing the important things in life, and the tools and strategies and hacks, whatever you have to figure out, so that you're not doing the urgent, because I can't just say that to you and immediately you do that, right? That takes time to figure out. And I've spent a good part of the last 2 years of my life figuring those things out and giving them to you. But at its foundation, it's not doing the urgent, but doing the important and living your life in that way. That allows you to not live in reaction. That allows you to not live in demand. That allows you to get really clear on what it is you're moving towards, and then being able to move towards it. That's why we call this quadrant the quadrant of focus. Now, when we're talking about being an inch from success, being an inch from where you want to be, this was one of those moments for me. It was understanding that I had been living my life like most successful people in quadrant 1, and I needed to work to move all of my life into quadrant 2. And I can tell you years later that I have done a fairly good job of that, and I'm always trying to learn more. But it was that realization that was the 1 inch that got me into this completely different area of my life, into this completely different area of efficiency. So this lesson, the cautionary tale, is when you struggle and when you get down on yourself and when you've been working hard towards a goal, that's the key. When you've already put in the effort and you're pushing towards that goal, it's very possible there's just one distinction you need to make.
A very powerful belief to leave today with would be, nothing's working, I'm 1 millimeter away.
It's very possible there's one new thing you need to learn, or one tweak that's right around the corner that's going to give you your success, and you fight. You fight to make sure that you find that inch.
We claw with our fingernails for that inch
that takes you over the top. You see, if I never would have received that knowledge about the bike seat, I may have not finished that race. I know that race was a struggle for me, and I went into it boldly and underprepared. And who knows, if I wouldn't have made that small shift of an inch, I may have not completed the goal. That's what you need to do. I hope you enjoy this week, and I hope whatever you do with it, you do 2 things with it. You be both purposeful and productive. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time. Did you like this episode? Would you like to stretch yourself every single week? If so, go to thestretchgame.com and click VIP Access. This is a community that I am working hard to grow, and it's totally free. It drops a video, an episode in your inbox every single week and helps you to stretch yourself by discovering deeper purpose and mastering higher productivity. And only subscribers get every video, so go there now, and we'll talk to you next time.